I do recommend, if you have an opportunity, everyone should know their ApoE gene status. So you do this test, and it tells you what your genetic risk is for Alzheimer's. The way it's reported is there's 3 different potential genes. They're called E2, E3, and E4. And just to make it a little bit more interesting, we have 2 copies of each of those. So we could be, for example, E2E2, or we could be E2E3, or any combination, you get it. Well, the E2 variant is associated with a decreased risk of Alzheimer's, so that's exciting. The E3 variant is what most people have. That's what I have. I've got E3, which is the most common, most typical, and that gives us a basically average risk of Alzheimer's. And then the E4 variant is associated with a pretty significant increased risk of Alzheimer's, especially if you've got 2 copies of the E4. Now, you might say, well, shoot, I don't want to do that test because I do not want to find out that I have that E4 situation. And my suggestion would be, it's actually a really good idea to find out, because there's so many things that you can do that will put a fire under you, I'm guessing, to fix all those other things in your lifestyle that could be increasing your risk. Because if you do have the E4 gene, even if you've got the double copy, it does not mean that you will get Alzheimer's. It just means that your risk is increased. So plenty of people have the double copy of E4 and never get Alzheimer's. It just means that your risk is increased. So it would be a really good idea to exercise, lift weights, keep your blood sugar down, keep your weight down, make sure your blood pressure is normal, take care of your head, try not to have a stroke, all of these things that we do have some agency over. So I think that's a really good idea to check. And if you do have the E4 gene, I just had a patient last week, actually it was a male patient who found out that he had the E4 gene, and he was actually very grateful because he is literally going to put a fire under his health, and he didn't usually lose weight. His blood pressure was a little elevated, his sugar was a little elevated. Now, none of these things were independently particularly scary on their own, but there were a lot of little areas of room for improvement, and he'd just been kind of putting it off. And so now he's going to really go after that, and hey, that's going to reduce his risk of heart disease and just generally improve his health span overall. So I think it's a really fantastic idea to do. So just ask your doctor to do that test. It's widely available, and it's not very expensive. I think we should all know what that is. And one of the great things, as I mentioned, that'll come from finding out is that will really encourage you to put some lifestyle changes into practice that'll help you in so many different ways.